You're back in time
Speaking of Rose
because we are live.
And then I screwed up Andy's name. I thought it was Bernston. I'm like, look, Andy, you spelled your name wrong on Zoom.
stop.
Everybody spells mine wrong.
Here's my Texas broker.
Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed.
Aren't
It's
we
because
all?
that's because I have a deal I'm trying to get ready for.
Right.
Oh, wait. We're live? I gotta fix my
We are
hair.
live.
I need my live streaming hair.
We will not be doing any slides. It'll be yours truly bloviating today. So enjoy that.
Sandy, I can't some days with you.
What? Do you like my sweatshirt, Lindsay? I feel kind of Texas. I feel
I
kind
know.
of
I was like, look at you go with the camo sweatshirt. What are we gonna do? Can't wait till you guys come to the ranch and hang out. It's gonna be fun.
threaten me with a good time.
Hey,
Right?
we'll go shoot hogs and
Oh,
hang
I'm
out.
definitely down for that. I've never hunted a live animal before, and a hog would be something that I'd actually want to kill, so.
Yeah, they're a menace. They're tearing up our creek bed right now. So
Ryan, do you want to go hog hunting?
Yeah, I'll see you this weekend, Lindsay.
I know Brian's like, I'm down. Shot show, killing shit. Like I'm in.
He
My
left a
Rico retreat.
he left a practice tourniquet for me here. We're
He's
gonna
all like, I can finally use my new scope and my new magazine, all these new attachments I got for my
Yeah,
gun.
but the one I kind of like built for that is a 300 blackout with a suppressor, and it's like so quiet that it's like perfect for like hunting because the other animals like nearby won't hear.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
Love
so take away my co-host rights, please, somebody. Who muted me? You did?
Somebody has the rights to mute Sandy.
Okay, my co-host rights are taken away now.
Like, I was like, that's
Because I
some
don't want
power.
to
You could,
hear everybody coming in and out when I'm reading.
yeah,
Oh,
I hit the wrong button.
oh, you're fired.
Must be Tuesday.
I'm like a cat. I have like 9 lives, but I've used like 8 of them so far.
Yeah. All right. So are we ready for me to rock and roll? Am I coming in clear? Everything's fine. I'm not frozen or anything. Okay, great.
You're
Perfect.
good.
You were good. No lisp today.
We're off to a good start. All right. Welcome to True Crime and Real Estate. I'm Sandy Lynn Burnett, CEO of my real estate company. And today's episode is titled Follow the Money: BlackRock and the Quiet Control of Housing. We're investigating how one financial giant, BlackRock, quietly influences our homes, our rents, and our chances of buying a house, all without directly owning most of the houses in your neighborhood. We'll be covering down on facts and the stories of everyday people caught in the gears of a system tilted by big money. Residential, oops, sorry. Let's start with a story that let's start with a story that might sound familiar. Imagine spending months searching for a home only to watch deal after deal slip away. That's what happened to one Florida woman in Fort Walton Beach who was outbid on 6 different houses by investment groups swooping in with cash offers. Each time she made an offer to buy a home for her family, an investor outbid her with ease. It's happening in so many markets. Big corporate buyers have amassed billions to invest in single family homes, often pricing out ordinary families. In fact, in 2021, investors bought about 24% of all single-family houses sold in the United States. That's a sharp jump from the typical 15 to 16% in prior years. In some Sunbelt cities, nearly 1 in 3 home sales went to investors, not families. So this isn't illegal, but it has real consequences. Fiercer competition for home buyers, higher prices, and more families stuck renting. So where does BlackRock come into this? BlackRock isn't a landlord, and it isn't out there touring houses to flip. But BlackRock is the world's largest asset manager, controlling around $9 trillion for its clients. It has a quiet but colossal footprint in real estate by owning big stakes in companies that do buy, sell, and rent homes. So let's follow the money. BlackRock and its index funds are among the top shareholders of nearly every major real estate player. For example, BlackRock is a top 5 owner of Zillow Group, holding roughly 5% of Zillow's shares, which is about 12.1 million shares as of late 2025. Zillow's website, as we know, is where millions search for homes and rentals, and BlackRock's stake means that it benefits when Zillow profits. For those of us in real estate, we also know that Zillow Group owns Follow Up Boss. It owns .loop, our e-sign platform. So it's not just Zillow's website that Zillow Group owns. BlackRock's funds also owned over 12.6 million shares of eXp World Holdings, which is the parent of eXp Realty, making BlackRock one of eXp Realty's largest shareholders. So the math for you guys, eXp has roughly 157 million shares outstanding as of early 2026. BlackRock's stake is roughly 12.66 million. So that's 8.1% of eXp World Holdings. That means BlackRock holds a high single-digit ownership percentage of eXp, enough to be one of the top institutional shareholders and benefit proportionally from stock performance or dividends, but it's not a controlling majority. But it doesn't stop there. Redfin, another popular real estate brokerage and listing site, has BlackRock money behind it too. Earlier in 2025, BlackRock's funds held as much as 7% of Redfin's stock, though they later trimmed it to about 2%, roughly 2.6 million shares. Even Remax, and by the way, I'm going to follow the money on like what BlackRock chooses to invest in real estate company wise, because I find that very interesting that it, sold off its stock. Even Remax and Realogy, now Anywhere Real Estate, count BlackRock funds among their stakeholders. In almost any company tied to home sales or listings, BlackRock and fellow giants like Vanguard are in the background as major owners. Now, what about the homes for rent? This is where the story gets even more consequential for everyday people. Institutional landlords, companies that own tens of thousands of houses and apartments, have surged over the past decade. BlackRock has poured money into these landlords rather than buying individual houses itself. So take Invitation Homes, the nation's largest single-family home rental company with over 80,000 houses for lease. BlackRock's funds currently own nearly 10% of Invitation Homes, roughly 61 million shares, making BlackRock at the top stakeholder in a landlord that operates in hundreds of neighborhoods across the country. Or consider American Homes for Rent. That's another huge house rental firm with about 59 1,000 homes. BlackRock holds about an 11 to 12% stake of that company, practically an equal heavyweight to the largest shareholder. And if we look at big apartment owners like Equity Residential or Avalon Bay, again, we find BlackRock and similar asset managers owning big slices. So why does this matter? Because when corporate landlords decide to raise rents aggressively or pursue evictions, BlackRock's investors profit from these decisions. BlackRock isn't giving orders directly. It's a passive investor in most cases, but the incentives align towards profit. And those profits often come from rent hikes on tenants and squeezing costs. And also, I mean, let's talk about the ownership in these real estate brokerages. We have seen these publicly traded real estate brokerages like EXP, every time the wind changes direction, they're laying off half their staff, and that means way less support for the agents, meaning they're not able to do as good of a job for their clients. It hurts consumers all around. So let's talk about rents. If you feel like your rent, if you're renting, you feel like rent in your area has gotten out of hand, you're not alone. Nationwide, rents climbed roughly 30% from 2019 to 2023, far outpacing income growth of 20% in that period. That's a staggering increase in just 4 years. In 2021, in the thick of that surge, a RealPage executive, RealPage is a tech firm, we'll discuss more soon, they boasted that apartment rents had shot up by as much as 14.5%, and openly credited their pricing software for driving those double-digit rent hikes. Think about that. Rents were rising at record speed, and the people behind the pricing algorithms were proud of pushing them even higher. By 2022, rent increases hit record highs in many cities. 20% jumps in places like Tampa or Phoenix were not uncommon. Families' budgets were breaking with millions pushed to the brink. Rising rents are not just numbers on a chart. They mean families forced to move, parents picking up extra shifts to keep up, or worse, people getting evicted. And indeed, as soon as COVID eviction moratoriums lifted, eviction filings roared back. In 2023, landlords across the United States filed roughly 1.11 million eviction cases, which is over 100,000 more cases than the year before, and almost back to pre-COVID levels. In many cities, evictions in 2023 actually exceeded the historical average. Houston, Texas, for example, saw nearly 84,000 eviction filings in 2023, which was 44% higher than a typical pre-pandemic year. So let that sink in. Tens of thousands more families evicted than normal in just one city. And studies show that corporate landlords are often the most relentless on this front. During the pandemic, a House subcommittee investigation found that 4 large corporate landlords, including one backed by private equity and one that's now part of Invitation Homes, filed nearly 15,000 evictions between March of 2020 and July of 2021, despite eviction bans. They weren't struggling for survival. In fact, the report found these companies were doing fine financially. One firm's emails even revealed cruel tactics, a directive to remove tenants' air conditioners, or called child services, to scare families into leaving if they were behind on rent. It was willing to destroy someone's life for the bottom line, as one lawmaker put it. Let me put a human face on this. Meet Marvia Robinson, a 63-year-old bus driver in Orlando. When COVID hit, her work hours got slashed. She fell behind on rent for her house, which was owned by none other than Invitation Homes, that giant corporate landlord. By January 2021, Marvia was about $4,900 behind. But she had a lifeline. It was a county program that was ready to pay $4,000 of her back rent directly to Invitation Homes. She asked the company to accept this aid. Invitation Homes refused. They emailed her saying they wouldn't take the relief funds due to the landlord restrictions without real explanation. Instead, the company sent Marvia a list of other options: charities, food banks, even advice to sell her plasma, her hair, or her eggs to raise money. I'm not kidding, you guys. They literally suggested she consider selling blood plasma or donor eggs. And then when she scrambled for help, Invitation Homes had sheriffs evict her. Within weeks, Marvia came home from an overnight shift to find the locks changed. No home to sleep in after a night of work. Now, Invitation Home spokesperson says evictions are a last resort, but Marvia's case shows how last resort came up pretty quickly, even when help was on the table. Multiply her story by thousands of other cities across the country. Now, BlackRock's connection here is that they helped fund the rise of firms like Invitation Homes, which enjoyed record profits and nearly 100% occupancy during COVID times. BlackRock's clients gain when Invitation Homes can increase revenues. And one way to increase revenue is, unfortunately, through fees and turnover from evictions or by jacking up rents on new tenants. This is how financial incentives trickle down to real people. A retired teacher or a pension fund invests with BlackRock. BlackRock invests in a rental company. That company pushes rents up and ousts late-paying tenants to maximize returns. And the investors collect dividends or stock gains. Nobody in this chain may explicitly want to cause evictions, but that is the net effect when housing is treated first and foremost as an investment asset. Speaking of treating housing as an investment, we have to talk about RealPage and the algorithm that might be pricing rents. RealPage is a Texas-based tech company that produced YieldStar, a software platform used by many large landlords, to set rent prices using an algorithm. By 2017, RealPage had become the dominant player in rent-setting software after buying up a competitor. The idea was simple: feed the software tons of data, including private data on what nearby apartments charge, and let it recommend the perfect rent price for each unit each day. The catch: those perfect prices tended to be a lot higher than what a human landlord might normally choose. RealPage's own execs admitted that their algorithm pushes you to go places you wouldn't have gone on rent hikes. One developer who worked on the software even said leasing agents have too much empathy, implying a computer will raise rent without sympathy where a person might hesitate. If this sounds like a recipe for rent gouging, federal investigators thought so too. Multiple lawsuits were filed in late 2022 by renters accusing RealPage and dozens of big landlords of running a cartel to fix rents using the shared algorithm. And in 2024, the US Department of Justice stepped in. The DOJ sued RealPage, calling its pricing system an unlawful scheme to eliminate competition among landlords. The complaint alleges that RealPage gathered sensitive, non-public rent data from competing landlords and then aligned their pricing, enabling what Attorney General Merrick Garland described plainly as landlords finding a new way to scheme to break the law by sharing info and raising rents in lockstep. In a free market, landlords would normally compete. If one lowers rent, others might follow to attract tenants. But with RealPage's YieldStar, landlords were encouraged not to undercut each other, but rather to hold out for higher rents. The DOJ's case is ongoing, aiming to restore competition and stop this algorithmic price fixing. It gets worse, if you can believe it. RealPage was so effective that it told some landlords to leave units vacant rather than rent them for less. This was confirmed by internal RealPage documents. The algorithm at times recommended taking a hit on occupancy just to keep prices high. In one Seattle neighborhood, over 70% of apartments were managed by just 10 companies, and every single one of them used RealPage's pricing software. It's basically a cozy club of landlords letting a shared algorithm set market rates. So you might be wondering, did BlackRock have a hand in RealPage? Indirectly. RealPage was a publicly traded company until 2021, and yes, major asset managers likely own shares. BlackRock's exact stake isn't public now because RealPage was taken private by a private equity firm. But more importantly, BlackRock is deeply invested in many of the landlords named in these lawsuits. The senators investigating RealPage noted that YieldStar was most heavily used in regions targeted by corporate buyers and with the highest rent increases. In other words, the same markets where institutional investors funded by firms like BlackRock concentrated their buying also saw landlords coordinating through this algorithm. RealPage bragged that its clients used it on over 4 million rental units. That's roughly 8% of all US apartments being priced by one company's software. When one pricing system has that much reach, it's as if millions of apartments have a single property manager. If that manager's goal is to increase profits for owners, renters don't stand a chance. Lawmakers called it a de facto cartel via software. To be clear, BlackRock itself hasn't been accused of wrongdoing in these rent setting cases, but this is the quiet control we're talking about. BlackRock's capital is entangled in the web of landlords and algorithms that are under scrutiny. Its influence is structural. By owning so much of the housing ecosystem, BlackRock's success is built on the housing market's financialization. Finally, let's consider another recent case of alleged market manipulation. This one involving two household names, Zillow and Redfin. These companies aren't landlords, but they run popular real estate websites. The FTC says Zillow and Redfin struck an illegal deal in 2025 that harmed the housing market. According to a lawsuit filed by the FTC and joined by several states, Zillow paid Redfin $100 million to effectively exit a business and not compete. Specifically, Redfin agreed to shut down its own rental home listing service for multiple years and instead just carry Zillow's rental ads. In plainer terms, Zillow paid to eliminate a competitor, giving itself more dominance over online rental listings. An FTC official said it bluntly, paying off a competitor to stop competing against you is a violation of antitrust laws. The deal meant landlords would face higher advertising prices, fewer platforms to choose from, and renters would have fewer places to find homes, possibly leading to higher rents or worse service. Remember, Zillow is partially owned by BlackRock's funds at a 5% stake and Redfin as well. BlackRock didn't cause Zillow and Redfin to make this deal, but again, it shows how the company controlling our housing market can collude in the shadows. And the same pool of global investors reaps the rewards until they're caught. So stepping back, how does BlackRock influence housing without buying homes directly? Through ownership and capital. BlackRock supplies the money that enables corporate landlords to buy up houses by the thousands. It holds significant shares in the corporations and tech firms that set housing prices, manage rentals, and even manipulate markets. BlackRock's trillions are in, how do I say this? REIT. Do I say REIT? I don't know. Index funds, If you know, let me know. Real estate,
Ritz.
how do I say it?
They're Ritz.
Ritz? Okay. I tried to avoid it earlier in this podcast, but I couldn't get around it this time. RIT index funds, real estate tech startups, mortgage-backed securities, you name it, all pieces of the housing puzzle. When BlackRock peers pour $30 billion into single-family rental acquisitions in a year, the market obviously reacts. Home prices in target areas shoot up because these players can pay cash at a premium, sometimes buying entire neighborhoods in bulk. Regular families can't compete with that. When BlackRock's index funds demand high returns, companies feel pressure to raise rents or cut maintenance costs to deliver profits. It's quiet in that no single BlackRock executive is dictating these moves. But the financial system's gravity has shifted housing priorities away from residents and toward investors. So let's be clear. None of this is about demonizing one company as some cartoon villain. BlackRock isn't plotting in a secret room to make your rent unbearable or to evict your grandmother. The company is operating legally within a system that prizes investor returns. And that's exactly the point. The system itself has become unbalanced, and BlackRock is a symbol of that imbalance. When housing is treated as a stock portfolio, when billions in global capital flow into local homes, the end result is what we're seeing now. Rents rising faster than wages, home ownership falling out of reach, and communities feeling the squeeze. It creates a real life urgency that's not drama, but reality. Families like the ones we talked about, the Florida home buyer who lost bidding wars, the tenants hit with 30% rent hikes, Marvia Robinson losing her home despite assistance on the table, they're collateral damage of this quiet control. They're far from alone. Millions of Americans are affected, whether they realize it or not, by decisions influenced by BlackRock's investments. The rent price set by an algorithm, the fact that a hedge fund owns the house next door, or the hidden agreement between listing sites that might have squeezed the rental supply. So our goal today was to shine a light on this often invisible web of influence. It's not as flashy as like a bank robbery or as obvious as a crooked landlord that you can point to on your street. It's quiet, dispersed, and usually legal. But the impact on people's lives is profound. And in a sense, it is kind of true crime in real estate, perpetrated not by lone bad actors, but a system that rewards wealth over well-being. In closing, remember the title, Follow the Money. If you follow it, you see that the skyrocketing rent that your clients pay or the house you couldn't buy aren't just bad luck. They're the product of deliberate financial strategies. BlackRock and other big institutions have quietly steered the housing market to serve investors, and now everyday people are paying the price. The facts we shared, from BlackRock's multi-billion-dollar stakes to national rent and eviction statistics to ongoing antitrust lawsuits, all point to a housing system under strain where homes are viewed as commodities first and shelter second. The hope is that by understanding this, we, the public, can push for change. Whether it's policy changes like antitrust enforcement, renter protections, or limits on speculative home buying, or simply raising awareness that this isn't just how it has to be. Housing doesn't have to be an asset where Wall Street calls the shots. It can be and should be primarily about homes for people. So, as your CEO, I want to take a step back. That ends today's episode of True Crime and Real Estate, but I want to tell you, this is, Josh and I have had several conversations about this. Lindsay and I have had a few. Obviously, my business partner, Holly, and I have set the tone here. But I want to explain why my real estate company does not plan to go public. We do not want to. When you go public, you don't control who buys your stock. We want to be beholden to our agent and private investors. So, and I'll also tell you, we have 10 million shares outstanding. So you can see how these companies get so diluted. EXP, what I wrote that it has 126 million shares outstanding. So when you earn shares in this company right now, like 1,500 shares for the My First 100 award, that's a high stake in this company. So I can't change the world. Holly can't change the world. But what we can do is we can point out things that we see wrong and not follow suit just because it's going to be a bigger paycheck. You know, we can do this right, you guys. So thank you for tuning in. Discussion.
I had heard of BlackRock, but never took the time, which is surprising because I like to research, but never took the time to like research them. And it's sad, but none of this is surprising, but very informative. I used to live in the, property management world. So I managed apartments and then single family. So I'm very familiar with, setting rents and all that stuff. So that was all very, very interesting to me.
Good. I'm glad. Josh, I'm interested in your thoughts.
I think with this one, I think we have to put it in context too, because there was a big situation with the whole rent control algorithm, software, and everything. And what came out is if you're a small investor, landlord, you have 7 or 8 doors, these software programs can actually save you a lot of time and really help you run a more profitable business. The problem is that scale them up to an institutional investor, which when I say that, I normally define that somebody that has more than 100 doors within any given market. Um, when you scale that up to them, it can cause a lot of problems because they have the sheer force. When you have that many doors in a specific market, you can start dictating prices much easier. And so I think that is one big distinction too. It's like, these rental software programs can help some people, but when they're used in a way for a company that has that much power in a specific market, it can go all kinds of crazy. So I know that's one thing. Like in my old market in Portland, the city council just had this big thing about, basically eliminating the use of these algorithmic type rent control systems. And it was interesting because I wasn't super familiar with it, but I saw it was a big issue. So I reached out to some people that I know, and it was interesting talking to them when you really understand how they work. If you're just a small landlord, they're huge for time savings and that type of stuff. And so they fought it really hard because they're like, that's going to take away a huge asset that we have in our business. And basically, part of it was the way the law was written locally too. Basically, they couldn't use more than like a handwritten spreadsheet. So even, they couldn't even have a computer spreadsheet on their computer. That was considered electronic, algorithmic, rent fixed pricing, all sorts of stuff. So that was part of it too with them. But I think it's one of those things when we start talking about rent control, we just have to be really careful because I think a lot of times it fits in the category of um, you know, it was paved with the best intentions in the world, but didn't go that
Mhm.
way. And so, and I think the other thing about it is still one thing we have to keep in mind, it's still very new within the housing space, especially in non-metropolitan markets. And we don't know what the long-term effects of what rent control is going to do, especially in a smaller market. So I
I
think there's
don't
just
think
a,
rent control's the answer. Like I'm a conservative. I don't agree with like the government stepping in and telling me how much I can or can't charge on something. I'm a capitalist, right? And so I don't even know that that's the answer. I also am wondering how do you stop people from using algorithms to price anything? Like how can you
yeah.
just be like, do not do it? Like, give me a break. Somebody else is going to invent like a tiny way around it, and we're going to continue to leverage technology. So I don't know what the answer is, which is why I wanted to make the point at the end is like, just because these algorithms give us these tools doesn't mean that we have to make that decision to like screw our fellow man over. You know what I mean? And so that's why I'm like, I wanted to say this is how we're setting the tone with our company. Like it's one action that we can take. I don't want somebody telling me how to run my company, but I'll run it like how I think is the right way, right?
And I think it just all comes back to we all have a choice within, our business life and our personal life to use ethics. And, I think that's really like it's tough, especially I like what you said about, you know, EXP. When you're beholden to your investors, how does EXP dictate their ethics?
Mm-hmm.
'Cause you kind of don't call the shots anymore, you know? And so that's one thing. I think it all comes down to business ethics. We all have choices we are going to make. And I'm a firm believer that good choices, although might be a short-term downfall for your business, long-term will make a better decision and make you a stronger business.
Brian posted a quote: next to bombing, rent control is the most effective technique so far, known for destroying cities. I agree.
I can make a few comments if you allow me to.
Yes, sir.
So, I was doing some research last night in the Rapid City housing market. I'm going to the Elevate Rapid City Mixer tonight, which the mayor attends. Are you familiar with the Elevate Council here?
I'm not,
They're
but I
they're the
watch
economic
things like that.
they're the economic development council for the city government here. So they host mixers once a quarter. And you know, I grew up here in Rapid City, so coming back after 26 years, I've kind of had a question about the zoning strategy here because it's a head scratcher, right? So the first comment I'll make is the president actually addressed, Sandy, what you talked about in a social media post. He is going to target investors and limit their ability to control the market. So I'll be curious to see what kind of legislation or executive orders happen out of that. Some research I did last night. Rapid City's rental vacancy rate has almost tripled over the course of 24 and 25. It went from roughly 6% to almost 14, 15% current day. Um, you know, a bigger black eye that I see is the income gap to the median home payment gap, right? So the median home price in Rapid City is 425,000. That equates to roughly, with current interest rates, a median home payment of 3,000 a month. The median income is 4,400 a month. People can't afford houses here. So my questions to this council is going to be, what are you doing to combat that gap? So I'm going to try and ask them some hard questions tonight. But yeah, you're definitely spot on, and thanks for allowing me to attend this. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure. And this is why we open it to the public, is because I think that everybody can benefit. Agents at other brokerages, anybody can benefit from knowledge. And although this isn't like, you know, someone wielding a hammer on somebody's skull, which is more like our style with true crime and real estate, or Ponzi schemes, or things that are outright illegal, I do think it's a crime. I personally think that what's going on needs to be handled somehow. Again, rent control is not the answer, but I did like, you know, and Blackstone is a completely different animal that I'll address probably on a different episode. But I started researching Blackstone after Trump made those statements. I think something needs to be done at that level. And it doesn't mean, you know, rent control, but I do like that we could stop these people from buying up all these properties. That's something somebody does need to step in and say, no, you can't buy these properties. These are for hardworking Americans to be able to afford. Thank you for your input. Anybody else? All right.
I did have a different, I guess, topic that I wanted to get some insight on and what everyone has been seeing in this market.
Let's do it.
Yeah, so I got a text last night, and there was a client that wanted to see a home without a pre-approval. And personally, how I run my business is that I get all my clients pre-approved, and it's within my consultation anyway. So then we know a budget, and we don't overlook, and then end up getting sad or upset that we can't make an offer on it, right?
Yep.
And so he was like, hey, I want to work with you, but I don't want to get pre-approved. And so I was like, I explained to him my process, and he's like, okay, well, I'm going to look for a different realtor. And to me, I'm not shocked about that, but I was like, whatever, it's okay. So wanted to hear everyone's point of view on what you do in your business, and what you've seen as a result if you don't get clients pre-approved before.
Well, I
showing.
think that you're doing the right thing. I always try to explain it, what's in it for the client, right? What's in it for them, not like see, some of these agents go about it the wrong way. Whoa, why would I spend my time helping you if you're not willing? And it's like, well, they don't want to hear that. What they want to hear is, I want to set you up for success. What if we're in a multiple offer situation? The market is frankly all over the place. We can't control how a listing agent wants to creatively price a property. So even though a lot of properties can sometimes sit right now, there could be a listing agent cowboy that comes in and completely underprices a property for multiple offers, and we have to act today and we have to act fast. And if you're not pre-approved, you tie my hands behind my back to negotiate for you. So I kind of like come in hot on that, just to show them like, look, this is what I can do for you, but I can't do it for you if you don't let me. And so after kind of having that conversation, and it's just a brief, like it goes as long as I just did it, right? If they don't want to get pre-approved, they don't have the money to buy a home. Reasonably, everybody is going to get pre-approved. This isn't because like a lot of them, they say, well, I just want to see if I like that home or not. Then I'll get pre-approved. That's what they say. And I say, you never like the first home that you see. Like, you don't need me to go see if you like a home. You need me for all the other stuff. What's everybody else got on that? Josh.
So I do my stuff a little bit different, but I think the most important thing is have a system for your business that works for you and stick with it. If you're doing it like Emily said, I think that's a filter that you're using to filter your lead gen out. And so I don't have any qualms about that. For me personally, I adopted one freebie, and what I'll tell people is, here's the deal: I like to do an in-person buyer consult. If the showing is the backdrop to that consult, I'm okay with it. I will show you one house, but we will also do a buyer consult at that time, and I will tell you the next steps to see subsequent houses. Um, and that's something that's worked really good for me. I kind of adopted that from, I don't know if anyone's heard Farrell's ice cream parlor, but their CEO long years ago had this saying, give the customer the pickle. And part of it was because we have this golden key that gets people into houses, right? And that's what they want. But we also need to be business people. And so that was a strategy I adopted. I'm more than happy to show you one house. Now it's changed a little bit because we have to have buyer agency before.
Yeah.
So obviously you still have to sign buyer agency to do the showing, but I'll tell people I will show you this house, but this is also your buyer consultation, because I really would much rather do an in-person buyer consultation. And my thought process is, if I'm going to go meet you at Starbucks, that's no different than me meeting you at the house and doing the buyer consultation there. And so that's my thought process on it. You
Is
know,
it because you want to get in front of them and like show that you're a human? So I understand that, but I'm still not a one freebie type
yeah.
person. And the reason, and I'll explain it to them, the reason being that I'm entrusted as a real estate agent when all these people are selling their houses to only bring qualified, ready, willing, and able buyers through their property. So I would only do that if it was a vacant home. I'm not going to like shuffle, like, do a home showing request and have this family vacate their home for somebody that I don't even know is good for it, you know?
So yeah, and that is the other part too. I do when I'm going to do this and I have someone, I will tell them, here's the deal. We're only going to do this if the other agent is okay with it. I'm going to call that other agent and I'm going to tell them, you need to understand, like, this person is not pre-approved yet. I'm using this as a buyer consultation. We hope to bring you an offer and everything, but I want to be up front. And I have had listing agents say, no, you can't show the house. And that's fine. I'll call my client back and say, hey, we can do a consultation in person and you can get pre-approved, but this house, they're not going to do it. Yes, what you said, the reason I do it is because I want to get face to face with people. I feel like I vet my leads much better face to face than I do through Zoom or even on the phone. And so that's the way I do it. And it is solely so I can get face to face with them and try to build that relationship and build that rapport. Um, and I will be honest with you, there's been some people that will do a showing, a buyer consultation, and then they ghost me. But I see that no different than if I went and sat at Starbucks, you know? So, but I do make sure that the other side understands I don't purport that, oh, these people are pre-approved and they're going to bring you,
That's
I'll be
good.
honest with the listing agents. And I think that's another big part of it too. If you start doing that too much and you aren't honest with the other, you're going to burn your reputation among other agents.
Yes.
Um, but it is funny. I had a listing agent reach out to me after I did that process. They were like, you know what? I actually really respected you for that. And it actually made me weigh your offer much better because you were willing to take time with your client without knowing you were going to get paid or anything. And I was like, huh, that's a little, and
That's
she took that
interesting.
back to her sellers and they actually accepted our offer because of that.
Good.
So,
That's awesome. Emily.
Yeah, that's a really interesting take. That's another good way to do business. And then, of course, like buyer agency, that is a must. But then also that lead didn't want to sign buyer agency with me. So I was like, okay, well then clearly it's a no. Like I'm not
It's
gonna,
literally
do
the
that. And
law. If you find an agent
yeah.
that doesn't sign buyer agency with you, let me know.
He texted
I'll
me,
report 'em.
I found an agent that's willing to do without. And I was like, huh, in Iowa? Iowa's it's the law. So I was like, okay, well, if you do want to interview another agent, then please keep me posted.
Well,
But
I'm curious, is it law or is it NAR? Like
It's
what's
law. In Iowa, it's law. Each state is different. So Iowa likes to adopt NAR rules and make them
got
carte blanche across the thing because they want to level the playing field. So all real estate agents are playing by the same rules. But in some states, our non-NAR members will have an edge because they won't necessarily have to do that. However, as you know, I spent years being a buyer specialist and only working with buyers. And so I've been doing a buyer strategy session and buyer agency since I was a little baby real estate agent before other people had even heard about them. So back in Arizona, I would actually go to people's homes and do my buyer strategy session. If I knew enough in advance, I'd actually have homes for us to go look at that day. Otherwise, after we were done with everything and they hired me, we would set up the showing for a few days later or the next weekend or whatever worked for them. So when I moved to Iowa, at first I lost some buyers because they thought I was too pressury or whatever. So it has been nice in that aspect that now more people do it and I'm not the odd duck. But now I do it over Zoom. And if the person won't take the time to meet with me over Zoom, then I don't stress about it. I just say next and I move on. And so for me, I actually like to do the strategy session, whether they've been pre-approved or not, because for me, it's a 45 to 60-minute investment of my time, then getting them pre-approved to build that trust and let them know like that whether it's today you can buy a house or a year from now, like I'm here for you. So I actually do it, have them hire me, whether or not they've talked to a lender, because it's really 50-50. So.
Josh, would you do a lead gen session for us that is like helping agents, after that first click? Like when they get a lead in, what should they be doing? Because I know we do like a lot of lead attraction, but
yeah.
how should agents be handling them in like a non-cringy way? I think that training would be very valuable.
Yeah. Let me know when we want to do it. I can
Thank you.
put it together. So,
Lindsay.
Okay, so this is something I've been studying the past few weeks because there has been obviously a lot of changes in Texas. Um, they modified some occupancy codes. Obviously, there's been not laws, but federal statutes and then things with the settlement. So, one, a lot of agents are saying, "Oh, well, it's required." Well, we have to be very, very careful because depending on what the client wants and what the brokerage is doing or acting to do on behalf of that person. Um, like in Texas, we just made a major change to our information about brokerage services form to include non-representation. So we can't require a client to sign anything. Like we can't demand that they sign an agreement. So the options are in Texas that if you want to go show someone, if you want to act within like what we call brokerage acts, like showing a property is actually a brokerage act. We have the option to allow the client to sign a non-representation agreement showing only. Um, and it's non-exclusive or representation agreements. which is defined as buyer is, is being represented by the agent and the brokerage, and there are duties that are involved. But, we have to be really careful because a lot of people are saying that these are laws when actually they're policies or requirements. And that's something I would urge every broker to dive into, because I had someone online talking about how there's this new state law and it's mandatory to have a buyer's representation agreement. And I'm like, it's actually not a law. And it depends on, are you NAR, are you non-NAR? And so there's a lot of gray out there. There's a lot of misinformation. So I challenge everybody to dive into it because I just was kind of taken off. I was like, you can't force anybody to sign a document. And so just dive into what actually is it? Is it a rule? Is it a law? Is it a policy? Because states are varying in the settlement and then what's written within the DOJ and things like that. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there.
Love that. Thanks, Lindsay. Josh.
Yeah, just to go back to that, it's interesting. So South Dakota, it is a law, because it's actually been a law since pre-settlement. Buyer agency has been a law here on the books. But like Oregon, I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe it's not a law yet, but it's coming into effect at their next like legislative session because they're going to pull it in from the settlement. Um, so I think it is really important that you understand, is it a law or not in your state? Um, I was going to say something else about that and I just blanked, so we'll move on.
Moving right along.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify a couple of other things, that it is a law in Iowa. However, in Colorado, it's not a state law. So if you're an R agent, it's required because of their standards, but not the state. Nebraska also updated their laws to match NAR's in July of 2025. Illinois requires a written agreement for anything, like it explicitly says for commercial or rentals as well. Whereas in Iowa, it's like residential only. And then Minnesota does not explicitly require a buyer agency agreement before showings, at this time. So just wanted to give us a quick rundown of all the states that we're in.
Josh.
I remembered. I think the biggest thing with this too, from a liability standpoint, is whatever your system is, do it every time because that system is what's going to save you from like a fair housing complaint. And I've seen that happen before. Actually, we had a broker in Oregon who got a complaint filed against him because he did it the same way every time. And then one client, he did it different. And that client happened to be a minority. Now, I know this broker and I know it had zero to do with the fact that that person was a minority. It had everything to do with he just didn't keep his system because he got busy and he deviated from his system. And although he ended up being fine and everything, it made a point. So whatever your system is, whatever you decide, just do it the same way every time because you're going to make your life a lot easier and you're going to protect yourself.
Thank you so much. This was a great session, you guys. Holly, close us out.
All right. When in doubt, reach out. Message us if you need us. We are here for you. We all started this morning with a blank slate at 0. So go out and talk to a buyer, a seller, or an agent today. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye, everybody.